Thank you and welcome to the show for today. I am host Alana McLaughlin and you are watching Perspectives. This morning on the show I have Hollis Thomas here discussing his background, his education, his transition to Tennessee, and his one city church. We're talking about unique churches here in Tennessee. We're talking about just the impact that he seeks to leave through his work here in town. And Hollis, I just want to thank you for coming this morning.
For
and
sure.
Thank you for just allowing me to pick your brain a little bit, man.
Oh no, this is gonna be fun. I'm looking forward to it.
Now tell me about baby Hollis. Tell me about just that background, early childhood years.
Yeah, so I had an older sister, Haley, who I kind of grew up wanting to kind of run behind and do all the things she did. She was athletic, and so I wanted to start figuring that out. A self-proclaimed mama's boy, definitely, and just really enjoyed my formative years as a little child.
Tell me about some hobbies, sports, anything.
Yeah, play basketball. To be honest, I was a reader.
Yeah.
I was always big on books. I remember being in the accelerated reader program at a young age and kind of competing with other kids in my elementary school to see who would bring home the trophy at the end of the year. So played basketball and some other things, but and even played basketball up until like high school. But I was really big on reading. I just always loved just kind of finding a good book and just sort of disappearing somewhere in the house.
Man, that accelerated reading program, that shows your age right there.
Yeah,
we ain't had that in about 10 years.
That's real. That's so good.
But take me through religion throughout that period. I know that a lot of children aren't too into church. You're usually being forced to go. You're usually like sleep through it. Tell me just kind of the role that religion and specifically church played in that early childhood.
Well, I have to say I had a praying mother, and
I know
it's funny because I don't know if we went to church or if we got dragged to church, but either way we were there.
Yay.
And so at a very early age, I think I began to develop a love for the church and the way it was expressed in my community and around like our friend and our family. I come from sort of a church background, if you will. I'm a fifth generation pastor. So if you go back on either side of my family, mom's side or my dad's side, if you go back 5 generations, someone was a pastor. And so I guess it was sort of in my blood, but I love the church. I remember they would take me to children's church and I would cry until they brought me back into the regular church. So it was just sort of always something that I was drawn to. And I think obviously, seeing what's happening now, it makes sense. But yeah, I was certainly always drawn to it.
And I want to talk about some of the characteristics of these 5 generations of pastors that you saw. Tell me what they look like. Yeah. Are you seeing the robes? Are you seeing the sweating and the hot church? Tell me about that experience.
Yeah, so,
and we're going to use that to kind of contrast what you're doing now. But tell me about what you saw.
Traditional sort of missionary Baptist church experience. My great grandfather, Robert Thaddeus Thomas, we call him RT, actually started churches all over the Southeast. And so Tennessee, Mississippi, Alabama, Florida, just all over the Southeast. He would, start churches, be there 5 or 10 years, hand it over to somebody else, go to another city and repeat the same process. And so that was really just a part of our background. Very, very traditional though. And so even now, even though what we're doing looks a lot different from the traditional church, I think I have a certain affinity and a love for their traditional church. I jokingly tell people one city is non-denominational. I'm Baptist, for sure.
And that makes sense. Honestly, 100%. If anyone goes and watches you preach, you have the Baptist touch.
Okay.
What do they used to say? That boy got a word on him.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Now, to wrap this first segment, I want to talk about just religion in that later adolescence.
Yeah.
Tell me, college, were you involved in any like local organizations within college that adolescence? And this is going to be how we just kind of wrap that first segment.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. So starting in college was super involved in sort of like prayer gatherings on campus, Bible studies. Faith has always been a part of sort of who I am and what I've done. And so I was interested in seeing how that would play out in college, because when you kind of go off to college, it's really your first kind of dab into adulthood. Mm-hmm. And so for the first time, I jokingly said earlier, like, I don't know if I went to church, if I was dragged to church. Sort of, for the most part, you go off to college, it's your first chance to really make that choice yourself if this is going to continue to be a part of my story, or if it's going to be something that, just kind of fades away. And so we were involved on campus, trying to find ways to share faith in a really relevant way. And I think even to this day now, with our focus on reaching college students, even here in the Nashville area, I think a lot of it was birthed from my own journey with faith and figuring out a way to really make faith more, I think, applicable to where I was as a college student, but also even more attractive for where I was as a college
And we're
student.
going to pick back up on that in our second segment, because both things are true. You do make this seem a lot more attractive to the younger generation. You
sure.
make it seem a lot more open and a lot less intense than what, a lot of stereotypes about the church can carry. And I encourage our viewers to tune into the second segment of Perspectives, where Hollis and I will return to discuss his work, his background, and the impact that he seeks to leave on local Tennessee communities. Welcome to the second segment of the show for today. For viewers just tuning in, I am host Alana McLaughlin. You are watching Perspectives. This morning on the show, I have Pastor Hollis Thomas here discussing his background, his education, and the work that he seeks to do in the national community and the impact that he seeks to leave on this community. In our first segment, we talked about Pastor Thomas's transition. Well, not even to Nashville yet, but his transitions through school. We talked about just some of those early religious experiences that he had, especially being a fifth-generation pastor. And now we're picking back up on just that later adolescence. We're talking about maintaining faith throughout college and beyond. And we're coming right back in.
Let's do it.
Right now, you're at Miles College.
Yeah.
You're a young guy. I specifically want to know about maintaining your faith and then also joining a Greek organization.
Yeah.
I know that you're a member of Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity.
Absolutely, for
which
sure.
my grandfather, who built all of this, he is also a member of Alpha Phi Alpha.
Amazing. I never knew that. That's so
Awesome
cool.
men, right?
Yeah,
Ice
awesome.
cold.
Yeah, for sure.
And so I really just want to talk about maintaining that faith while going through that process, especially because in my generation, there is a huge push on walking away from lettered organizations, whether Greek or non-Greek organizations.
Absolutely.
There's a huge push on revisiting missions and principles and really determining whether these things are of Christ or not. And a lot of people can't really speak to an experience like that without having really been in it.
Absolutely.
And I want to pick your brain on that. Tell me the inspiration behind that, joining that fraternity, and really how you maintain that faith throughout that process.
Yeah, so I think in all honesty, it's challenging. I think it's challenging to, in the college experience in general, I think that there are so many opportunities for you to engage in organizations, activities, friend circles, whatever it might be, that can be sort of counterintuitive to faith, in all honesty. And I think that when I look back on my college years, I certainly had some success in maintaining my faith during that season, but then I also had some failures in maintaining that success as well. I think that by and large, we're the sum total of the 5 people that we spend the most time with. I say it this way to our congregation at One City: it's hard to be your best self by yourself. And so I think we have to really consider, who am I surrounding myself with? What values are they living out? Because more than likely, if I'm around it, then I'm going to start to mimic it in some way. And so I think that obviously in this culture, there's been a lot of attention around Black Greek letter organizations and people who are denouncing and leaving organizations. I personally think that it has to be a personal conviction. That if within your relationship with God, if that's something that He burdens your heart to do, then you gotta do it. The Bible says like really extreme things sometimes, like if your left hand offends you, cut it off, right? And that sounds like so just like brash and just like, why would I do that? But literally, I think the spirit or the meaning behind it is don't let anything get in the way of you and the values that you're choosing to pursue and the values that you're choosing to build your life around. And so I would encourage anybody who's a part of an organization, whatever it might be, that if it's getting in the way of you and who you feel like God is calling you to be, then you've got to make the decision that you feel led to. Personally, for me, and I know countless other people who use their membership in Black Greek letter organizations to serve the community, to give back, to be a role model for younger students, maybe coming up in some of the same communities and schools that produce many of us. And so I think there's value in it, but certainly I think that each of us has to make decisions that are in alignment with what we feel, God is leading us to do.
That's like about the most beautiful, perspective I've heard about that topic. I ask almost all people of faith that
sure.
I come across who are Greek, I ask them that question, and this is about the most in-depth answer that I've gotten, and I respect that.
Yeah.
And kind of with knowing all this information about you and these experiences at Miles, take me into your transition to Nashville.
Yeah.
And tell me that story. I got to hear this story
Yeah, for sure.
a few months ago when I walked you down at McGavock High School and like interviewed you.
Yeah.
But seriously, I'd like to know, and I'd like our viewers to know about that transition from Alabama to Nashville.
Yeah, it's been a fun one. Transition is always a great thing. Everybody likes moving 3 hours away, right? So we spent the vast majority of our adult lives in Birmingham. That's where I met my wife, started our family. Obviously, I was in ministry there, part of a really, really successful church that's just doing a lot of good things in the Birmingham area. And we just kind of start feeling like God say like, hey, it's something else that I want you to do. It's something else that we're calling you to do. And we wanted to lean into that, kind of figure out what that was. And turns out it was Nashville, and kind of felt God leading us here. And originally I was like, no way, like what, but just started to kind of pray about it and look into it, and it felt like it was something that God was calling us to do. And so we just kind of up and relocated our entire family from Birmingham here to Nashville. We've been here about a year. Started working to build a team, just trying to see, who in the city might be interested in helping us start a brand new church. And people started responding to that like crazy. I mean, we were just kind of making posts on Instagram and all of those things. And people just started to respond to it. We started having meetings with people, started having preview services at Rocketown in downtown Nashville. And yeah, we just kind of trusted God, to be honest.
Hollis, I have to ask,
Yeah.
but before you even made it down here, tell me about, just explain that to your wife, that you just want to pack up.
Yeah.
Tell me about that. And I know that she's your a co-pastor.
For sure.
And I think that that's a beautiful thing that you've actually like convinced her and she's actually on board with this. But
Absolutely.
seriously,
Yeah.
pitching this idea to her, tell me about that.
It wouldn't have been possible without her obviously coming on board with it. In fact, when I first felt leading us to do it, that was really sort of the way I thought I'd get out of it. I'm like, my wife will never, she'll never agree to doing this. And lo and behold, we went out to dinner one night, and I kind of shared with her what I felt God was leading us to do. And she almost instantly was like, yeah, I think that's it. So I think it's important to have a support system no matter what it looks like, because some people are married, some people are not. But anytime you're really chasing a calling, a dream, you're a visionary, maybe starting a business, pursuing a degree, whatever it is, if you're pursuing a goal, I think we have to really take the time to see, okay, what's my support system like? Who's kind of helping me reach these goals? No man is an island unto himself. We don't reach these things on our own. So, yeah, man, sharing that with the wife was interesting, to say the least, for sure.
And now, to wrap this second segment, I don't want to get too deep into it because this is going to be for our final segment. Tell me about deciding on McGavock High School as a location for One City Church.
Yeah, so obviously we wanted to be in a place where we could partner with the community, right? We don't believe that Sunday should be the only day that a city knows that a church exists, right? And so, yes, it's great that we have church on Sundays, but we believe that Monday through Saturday we should be the church. So you have
and we're
church
going to pick back
on one day,
up
for
on just Monday through Friday, Monday through
Absolutely.
Saturday having church. And I encourage viewers to tune into the final segment of Perspectives to hear this awesome story, to hear Pastor Thomas talk about his background, his education, the One City Church, and ultimately ways that the community can support him. Final segment of the show for today. For viewers just tuning in, I am host Alana McLaughlin. You are watching Perspectives. This morning on the show, in the last two segments, I've had Pastor Hollis Thomas discussing his background, his education, his mission, and ultimately the impact that he seeks to leave on local Nashville communities. In our first two segments, we talked about Pastor Thomas's life. We talked about his impact. We talked about his family life and all the experiences that have led him here to Nashville, Tennessee, with the church that he has, the One City Church, a non-denominational church that meets at McGavock High School here in Nashville. And we're talking about how in the heck did you even establish a church at a school to begin with?
Yeah.
And that's literally where we just left off.
For sure.
So yes, tell me the McGavock story.
Yeah, so it's interesting. We were talking about this a little earlier, but we really wanted to be a church that had impact beyond just Sunday. And so I think that a city should know that a church is in that city not just on Sundays. Like, what are we doing Monday through Saturday to engage the community, serve the community, meet the needs of that community? And so we thought that partnering with the school would sort of kind of really help meet a few of those needs. So obviously we'd have an auditorium and a space where we could meet at, but then it also would serve as like this central hub where the community meets. You know, a school is a place where students meet, parents are there often, faculty and staff members are there as well. And so it kind of serves as like this central meeting point for a community. And so we thought, what better way to really engage the community than by actually partnering with the school in that way. Shout out to Metro Nashville Schools, Principal Jackson, all of the lovely folks over there at McGavick who were on board and agreed to allow us to host our services there in this first season of our.
And I have to, please tell me about just like the specifics behind that.
Yeah.
Because like, now I work at McGavick.
For
and,
sure.
and I just look at this and I see this big space and I'm like, oh my God, how was he able to do this? I think it's beautiful.
Absolutely.
But I think it wrecks my mind. I'm like, how, what, who did you call? What did that look like?
So really just relationships. And I think that's one of the things in my generation that I want to be a champion of is that we need to do a good job of building relationships. Just had a friend out in the Murfreesboro area who knew the principal over at McGavick. It was like, hey, there's a guy coming to town starting a church. It's looking for, you know, a partnership with a local school. Would you be interested in doing that? They were able to kind of connect us with some people over at McGavick to kind of help get the ball rolling. And it's been a blessing, though, to be honest. We're helping them restart Fellowship of Christian Athletes over at the school, also serving with First Year Academy with the freshman students over there. We were able to speak at the National Honor Society induction ceremony. We've come out a couple times to feed teachers. We were just over there giving away backpacks, school supplies, shoes for all of the students. So it's just been a wonderful, I think, marriage for us and giving us an opportunity to really serve and give back to that community.
And that really kind of segues into the mission behind the church.
Yep.
One city.
Absolutely.
I want you to tell me, just seriously, in 5 to 10 years,
Yep.
if you go somewhere else or the church changes or whatever, I want you to tell me the impact that you seek to leave, the lasting impact that you seek to leave through this church. And I want you to tell me the impact that you seek to leave on the congregation,
For sure.
on the people who are listening to you. Tell me that.
Yeah, that's a loaded question. So our mission is to love God, love people, and make a difference. That's the simplest way that I can answer it. We want to love God, we want to love people, but we want to make a difference in the community. And I think we aim to do that in several ways. We believe that Nashville clearly is growing. This is a city that's just like exploding in growth. And so we want to be able to serve this growing city spiritually, to give it a spiritual foundation. People ask me, like, do you want a big church? And it's like, well, yeah. But I think we want a big church full of big people so that we can have a big impact. Big church full of big people so we can have a big impact. We don't just want a big church. We want big people in our church. We want amazing husbands, wives. We want entrepreneurs, politicians, educators. We want people who are really sold out to that mission of loving God, loving people, and making a difference. So we hope when we look back in, 10 years from now, that we've seen, thousands of people get saved, that we've seen scholarships given away. There's major colleges throughout the Nashville area. We want to help college students further their education. We want to help, support people who may be having housing insecurity and housing needs. The cost of living in Nashville is just drastically increasing. And so for some people, that's a real problem. How does the church step up and help solve some of those problems? So in 10 years, I think we would have given away thousands of dollars in scholarships, help people find housing, while also being like this spiritual kind of birthing place to help people stay rooted and grounded spiritually as well.
And I want to talk about one of the unique characteristics about your work and about your faith is how modern you are. Like even how you look right now.
Okay.
You walked in this morning, I was like, you look so cool. And you're like, this is cool, but it is cool. And especially for a pastor, because when you think, especially a Baptist pastor, when you think about, you're thinking the long beige robe that's like 3 sizes too big. You're thinking about the microphone that's like crackly, the sweat rag, the handkerchief right here. And you're not that. But you still have that word. You have that that magnifying kind of speech.
I appreciate that.
Tell me how you're able to kind of modernize the church and how the benefit that's had, especially with your younger generations.
Yeah, I think it's hard to be productive if you're not first authentic.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I think it's hard to be productive if you're not authentic first. And so for me, productivity looks like showing up as who I actually am. Right. And so I think for too long, maybe as pastors and leaders, we may have bought into an idea that we had to look a certain way or dress a certain way or sound a certain way. And then if we're kind of caught in that, then I think the people who are coming to church get caught in it too.
You're right.
And they think, hey, I can't come if I don't look a certain way or sound a certain way or dress a certain way. And then instead of building, this place where everybody feels welcome, we end up kind of building some barriers. And I don't think we try to do that. I just think it happens naturally when we don't show up maybe, fully as ourselves. It doesn't give people the permission to do the same. And so I just kind of made a decision like, hey, I'm going to be a 34-year-old guy. And I love God. I love people. I want to make a difference. I love the Bible. I know it a little bit, and I want to help people kind of grow in their relationship with God as well. But I have to do that looking and sounding and showing up as who I actually am. And so I think some of the productivity we have seen is a result of some of the authenticity that we walked in.
And you're so right, because seriously, I didn't know anything about you.
For sure.
But I saw you in real life, and you were dressed pretty similar to this, like nice shoes, nice cool top. and I was thinking, this guy couldn't be a pastor.
For sure.
Like, where did this cat
No
come
way.
from?
Who's this guy?
No way.
Yeah.
I'm like, but seriously, because it's been so ingrained in us that the pastor can't be cool. You got this fresh haircut. Yeah. No, you're supposed to have a receding hairline. You got these cool glasses.
I do have a receding hairline. They sprayed some of this.
It's hilarious. No, but you get what I'm like the George Jefferson.
No, absolutely.
Yeah, and seriously, just meeting you and seeing something different, that inspired me.
Yeah, that's good.
And even I just think about just my whole view of church. Yeah. We are conditioned to come, like they say, you come in your best. You come in your Sunday best. But that adds a lot of pressure to people who just want to.
And I don't think anything's wrong with that. I think it's being authentically who you are. You may come to one city on a Sunday and I have on a suit. There won't be many Sundays where it happens, but it does.
Yeah.
Because that's a part of my personality. I will put on a suit. But I think the idea of having to be a certain thing in order to be accepted in a certain place, I think that's dangerous, especially when I think about the generation that our church primarily serves, which is a heavy millennial and Gen Z congregation. The majority of our church is probably, between 25 and 40, And so I think that millennial Gen Z generation is kind of like, hey, we really value being ourselves and being authentic. And I think it's hard to attract that if you're not embodying and being that yourself. So it's like, we want to be us.
Yeah.
It matters a lot to us.
And I want you in this last about minute of the segment,
For
plug
sure.
yourself in, plug the church, give me the
Absolutely.
location, the address, ways that the community can support you in one city.
Yeah, absolutely. So on Instagram, Facebook, all of that stuff, we are One City, www.theonecity.org. I'm at Hollis J. Thomas on all of my social platforms. And we have 2 worship experiences, 9:30 and 11:30 a.m. every Sunday morning at McGavick High School, 3150 McGavick Pike.
And with that being said, thank you, Pastor Thomas. Thank you for
so
just
much.
the work you do. Thank you for sharing your story, and thank you for letting me pick your brain. And to our viewers, thank you for allowing me the opportunity to share the stories that shape our wonderful community. I wish you a good morning.